Welcome to the Luxury Week. We're going live. It's very exciting. This is our inaugural The Luxury Week, so welcome. We're going to find our feet with you. So today we've got an incredible array of topics to talk about. We're talking about the future of sustainable luxury, incredibly topical. And I'm really pleased to introduce you to our first speaker, Diego Bivero-Volpe, who is the founder of brand evolution agency Volpe and one of the co-founders of the Luxury Week. Diego is joining us from London today. Hi, Diego.
Hi, how's it going, Hannah?
Yeah, good, thank you. I'm joining you from Oxfordshire, from the wilds of Oxfordshire today.
Wonderful. It's very exciting to start this chapter for the Luxury Week in the next 3 days.
Yeah. So I just wanted to start asking you about what was the original idea behind the Luxury and how did this come to fruition?
Yeah, so Maris and I thought that this was an interesting time to start a conversation across the industry leaders in luxury and really talk about the issues that are challenging not just today, but also the future of the broader industry. I mean, we intend this to be effectively an essential congress for leaders and participants to get together, discuss what the future will look like, how we can collaborate, build a new foundation, and and sort of thrive in this incredibly influx world that we live in.
Absolutely. I mean, the timing does seem perfect to have it, at this point in the summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Things going on and so many ideas. So I just wanted to mention now that we are partnering with UNICEF for this event. Could you just tell us a bit more about that and how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very thrilled to be partnering with UNICEF on this, as obviously the conference is free in itself, but we encourage everyone that's participating to donate to UNICEF, and you'll see a tab to do that on the Hopin site here, and on the luxuryweek.com. You'll be able to find the tab there as well. So we are, so UNICEF is currently in the process of creating this whole campaign around how COVID has affected children around the world. And children are unfortunately one of the most affected groups, not just necessarily through the disease itself or through the infection itself, but rather for all the socioeconomic effects that affect them directly. So obviously their caregivers, so their parents or whoever may be in their charge, has been globally, a lot of them have been affected, and therefore their ability to get to school, to learn, to get food and water has been affected. So UNICEF has stepped in, especially in areas where potentially we don't hear about it as much, but for example, sub-Saharan Africa, South America, and Asia, where large communities have been affected by that, and UNICEF has stepped in to basically aid children in need.
Well, it's a great cause, and I really do hope that the attendees, as much as they find the content super interesting over the next 3 days, if at all possible, if you could just make a small any donation, large or small, would be much appreciated.
Absolutely.
So as an entrepreneur, Diego, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, what are some of the general key lessons that you've learned in business over your career? And can you share that with us?
Sure. I'd say in general, the journey of an entrepreneur is hard. You get challenged every day with different problems, situations. You're constantly navigating sort of day to day, as well as you have to plan for the future sort of simultaneously to that. I think that one of the key things is that you should take great care in not trying to overstretch yourself. Stay conservative, both whether it's in expenditures or in relation to revenue, as well as to your time, which is obviously the most valuable resource. And one really good practice is just trying to complete one task before moving on to the next. Even though you might have 1,000 tasks in a day, it's really important to just kind of be really disciplined with yourself and do one thing at a time. And also, you can have very ambitious goals. That's a good thing, but you have to build the foundations before you can get to that ultimate sort of dream goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that single task focus is really important.
Yeah, exactly. They say like sort of a mixed focus delivers mixed results, right?
Mm, that's definitely a good piece of advice. So talking about your agency Volpe, how would you describe it? What do you do? tell,
Yeah.
tell
So,
us more about
we're sort of a hybrid between a marketing company, a traditional communications company, and a growth and venture lab. So we're kind of an interesting sort of 21st century take on I guess what the space that was broadly occupied by what we know as PR.
that. Mm,
We understand digital. We understand community growth. We understand business mechanics and cementing things within a sort of global cultural conversation, whether that's across strategic partnerships, global ambassador schemes for brands,
mm,
or specific event activations to get attention of press and key opinion formers. We approach, I guess, clients with the same creative perspective that we would with our own companies, and that's really important. So we're not a sort of a layer on top, but we rather work within the organizations that our clients work with.
mm. So just picking up on that, I know one of your key skills is instigating brand partnerships. Why are collaborations and partnerships so prevalent in the luxury industry these days? What are they offering that people are looking for?
Sure. I'd say that partnerships is probably one of our favorite areas to work in, because it combines, I guess, the essence of two brands or parties into one, and it creates a unique new third result out of that. And today's consumer, especially these consumers in luxury brands, value craftsmanship and quality overall, and partnerships and collabs are essential part of that. So they're celebrating craftsmanship and brand narrative, and of two separate parties that potentially often are from different spheres, and combine them into something new and exciting. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a purely commercial play, rather a way to align one brand to a broader conversation. So a perfect example is like Moncler's Genius range, which
Yeah,
comes to mind because they are a very high level concept, and you might not buy specifically that effectively art piece that's part garment, part art piece, but you
yeah,
definitely would interest yourself in sort of the broader conversation that the Moncler may be a part of, and you go in, and that's, I mean, from a commercial perspective, it's shown to be a huge boon for Moncler itself. And if it's something more traditional, like a product line, someone like Louis Vuitton has been amazing at this, sort of creating rare, limited runs that create exclusivity and have a huge sort of draw to them. And they've been one of the sort of the leaders in bringing this to the mainstream. Now, if it's something a little bit different, like a venue or experience, a collaboration can add a huge amount of value, can create touch points and conversations where potentially they wouldn't have existed prior. I mean, we did a project with a venue where we designed, we did a partnership between an artist and a members club, and we got the artist to design effectively like a mini tactile exhibition on menus. So across all the menus in the venue, there was like this exhibition of the artist's work, and that created a huge amount of attention, both from a consumer perspective and a press perspective. And this is, just you could argue it's a utilitarian sort of item that created this new avenue to express something about the broader brand. Right?
and I think that kind of multi-sensory experience is something that is going to be touched on by quite a few of our speakers over the next few days.
Yeah.
Creating extra levels of depth and experience and immersion for the consumer. And just going back to the Moncler partnerships, I think that's such a great example of collaborations. So obviously Moncler, incredibly high-end luxury ski wear, partnering with some of the most exciting fashion designers on the scene today, partnering with Richard Quinn, who won the inaugural Queen Elizabeth II Award for Fashion. And who else do they do? Simone Rocha, J.W. Anderson. So actually incredibly supportive of British brands, British fashion designers as well. And like you say, they are art pieces. I think the Valentino Moncler gown was going for sort of, 10,000.
Hugely viral. Yeah, it was everywhere.
It's a real showpiece there to get press attention. It shows the capacity of the manufacturing for Montclair, and also creates, kind of new revenue streams for these more emerging designers as well. So very much a mutually beneficial partnership there.
Absolutely.
So obviously today we're talking about sustainability. So how can sustainability be forged through collaboration? Do you have any examples of that we can share?
Yes, actually, this is a really interesting point. I mean, we live in a sadly over-consuming throwaway culture, and we're starting to see consumers themselves backlash against this excess. And I think one of the reasons luxury products keep booming with younger consumers, millennial, Gen Z, etc., is because they represent quality and they're built to last. They come with a sense of craftsmanship and sort of developed for generations. Workers get paid properly. There's less waste. Not to say the general industry cannot do better. They can. But in general, there's a stark contrast between sort of the fast fashion side and the sort of luxury side. And to answer your question, I think that collaborations fit in with this broader conversation about permanence and luxury. And further to this, consumer demands more from the brands that they consume, and the materials and the process in which things are made are as important as provenance was sort of historically to previous generations. And brands collaborating with new styles and brands using recycled materials, upcycled fabrics, leathers, and this is all an extremely compelling sort of narrative for brands.
And these collaborations do often tend to be produced in smaller runs, and that has that kind of limited edition scarcity value to it. So I think
absolutely
the hope is that there would be less waste. And these limited edition runs are often going for a lot more money than they're originally sold for, aren't they? They become really collectible pieces of a brand's design history that
And that's an interesting point as well, because it sort of fosters this sense of community. Like, in order to be the first to get it in, you have to be a part of a group of people that are aware that the drop, if you will, is happening. And those people then pass it on to a second community, which is sort of in resale, that then adopts that sort of culture and passes it on. And so there's this whole really sticky chain that evolves around that. So collaborations and sort of are the kind of future of what we're seeing already, but I think it will continue to grow as a key driver of the message of brands.
Yeah, you see this a lot actually with high-end trainers or sneakers, wherever you're tuning in from, what you want to call them. They're creating this massive sense of hype about these collaborations, to the point where you've got people queuing from dawn just to be the first to get in and spend $500 on a pair of trainers. That is a really special collaboration, incredibly popular with Gen Z and millennial consumers. And I think, again, that's another point that we're going to look at through the next few days, is look at how these emerging consumers are going to purchase and what they're really after. So moving on, I wanted to ask, you've done a lot of work as an investor. So as an investor, what do you look for when you're identifying a company to invest in?
Well, first, I'd say we're fortunate enough to be able to invest part of our company resources through Volpe Ventures into growing businesses that we see global potential in. Apart from a financial component, we put the weight of our agency's resources into it. Sure that we effectively do that to ensure we'll grow, solidify its position, whether it's marketing or growth perspective, and whether that's it could be in the digital e-commerce side, or it could be more engaged campaigns for different type of product or service. We're typically agnostic on sector. We look at companies we can realistically help with the skill sets and global network we have. So we may not take on like a biotech startup, but we would look at sort of a drinks brand or a media platform, something like that. We look for generally is based on the founder or founders and the economics, obviously, and the perspective, the viability of the company to grow exponentially in 5-10 years sort of timeline. Obviously the drive and the team make all the difference. And early on, you can typically see whether a founder or founders have the impetus of creative solutions to problems whilst sort of staying the course for the company's mission. I think that that's really important. It's, as we talked about before, being entrepreneurs difficult. And, if you don't have that sort of discipline to be able to pull resources out of thin air almost, like really dig deep into your network to find solutions, and whilst maintaining sort of that North Star of what the objective of the company is over a set period of time, then you kind of get lost in the stream of things that you have to do, and ultimately that can collapse a company. So you're really looking for those kind of rare personalities that can do that, whether they know what the steps are going to be to sort of accomplish that goal. Most likely they won't, but if they have that sort of drive and ability, then that's fine. You can help them navigate that. And one of the other things we really look for as well is sort of inclusivity in venture funding. I mean, when we started this, Volpe Ventures, we felt that there was this like staggering discrepancy in how funds and general attention gets provided in general versus how it provides to an underserved community.
Yeah,
we want to be like engines that power that minority community to come out in front, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, you and I have talked about this before, but what barriers are there to entrepreneurship for minorities and people of color? Because I know this is an area that you're passionate about, as am I. So,
well, I mean, I think that there's probably not enough time to unpack that fully, but it's safe to say that there's a disparity, and it's pretty appalling. I mean, for example, you have to look at the US is the world's largest venture markets. We use that as an example, but like only 1% of funding in the US goes to companies started by Black founders, 1.8 to Latin founders, and just 9% to women. I mean, that is shocking. And in a modern capitalist society, I mean, this is a pretty disgraceful heritage. I mean, not just from a socioeconomic perspective, but also from a business perspective. I mean, you think about that. The world's best capitalist, you would think they would be looking at the world's most untapped resource, the communities that have in large part shaped and created modern cultural landscape. I mean, the disparity, I mean, it runs really deep. I mean, the sad reality is that this also applies to not just venture funding, but bank financing and traditional forms of raising capital. It's like, founders might lack the ability to have a network of wealth around them to just ask friends and family for seed stage capital, right? And beyond that, they're not getting bank financing and so forth and so on. So this kind of chain continues, and Volpe Ventures, we're looking to at least in some part rectify this and do our part to change this narrative and sort of support incredible businesses that just need that funding and that support.
Absolutely, because as you've said before, it's in everybody's business to support these people into business to create a new generation of consumers.
Exactly. So when you're looking at it from a I guess a luxury perspective, you'd think that the big companies that are selling to these people would also look to invest in their future so that they can eventually become consumers. I mean, purely from a self-interested point of view, it makes sense to do it, right? So
absolutely. So talking a bit about the pandemic right now, do you as a businessman see any areas of opportunity and growth for business post COVID-19? Is there a silver lining to this?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd say that well, I'd say certainly. I mean, obviously, the world's most likely never going to be the same. But by that same token, this allows us to sort of revisit old ideas, explore new ones, and evaluate whether the old way of doing things is really the right way. What's our perspective in the next 10, 50, 100 years from now? There's no question. I mean, we live in tenuous times, but it's something nice about the whole world sort of getting together and finding solutions, new ways of doing things, and the things that make us better, not just as humans, but for the planet as well. And I think it behooves us as leaders in sort of the luxury industry to spearhead that change and really solidify what the future is going to be like for all of us. And you know, I guess that's the main silver lining, is that ability to pause and sort of revisit and reassess, right? And not just doing things because that's the way they've always been done, but rather looking at them from a new lens, a new perspective, and hopefully it will create a powerful new positive paradigm.
Absolutely, this is really a time of opportunity to disrupt the old ways of doing things. This is
absolutely. I mean, and you know, it's a weird one because, you know, even what's happening in terms of the social and unrest, and you know, which is exhibited basically globally over the last 4 months, you know, that's, in my opinion, a great deal has come about in great part because of the ability to sort of stop and reflect on our society and sort of the injustices and everything else that's sort of defined us for the last 100 years and plus. You know, it's like, what's the next 100 years going to look like? How are we going to react? How are we going to change? And how are the brands that are in our ecosystem going to react to that? And how are they going to respond? And how are they going to affect change for us in the future?
Yeah. That really is an interesting question, is to project 100 years into the future and think, what does capitalism look like 100 years from now? You know?
Sure. Absolutely.
I don't know. Maybe that's an answer we can look at in the course of the next 3 days. It's quite a big one. Going back to the concept of luxury, I was wondering, what does luxury mean to you as a word? It's such a potent word. It has so many meanings.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, from a personal perspective, I mean, there's nothing more luxurious than time, right? I think that, you know, again, to go back to the sort of COVID example, you know, the whole world was given 4 months to basically just stop. And, you know, you realize how much, first of all, how much you can actually do with your day is quite overwhelming when you're not spending time, you know, going to meetings and coffees every 5 minutes. But also, you know, when you have the ability to stop and reassess the things that you're interested in, the things that you want to, areas where you might want to learn and grow and so forth. But I think from a business perspective, you know, luxury is, you know, when I look at a product and I feel like it's luxurious, it's really because I feel like there's a sense of craftsmanship and, you know, real authenticity to it. You know, it's either, you know, where it could be a heritage thing or a new product, but you really feel the sense that, you know, the love and thought has been put into the creation, design, and manufacturing of it. And really that product, almost as an art piece, you know, that can exist within society, that it could be utilitarian, but it has that sort of sense of permanence. And that to me is real luxury.
Yeah. So I would love to ask everyone who's watching, hello, welcome. If you do have any questions, please do feel free to drop them in the chat box. This is very much a conversation. The idea is not that we just talk and you listen. So yeah, please do drop any questions in the chat box for either Diego or myself. Let's just check with the powers that be if the chat box is working. I think so. I'm going to try and send a message. Oh no, that's we're still getting used to the technology, but it seems to be working pretty well. But even, for example, the fact that, you know, we've got speakers joining us from all over the world over the next 3 days using technology like this. As you said, Diego, many of us have been working from home for the best part of 4 months now, and it is, you know, really streamlining everybody's working day so you're not traveling all the time. And I think what's interesting is, you know, we're actually seeing people moving out of the cities as well for the first time probably since the Industrial Revolution. Any questions coming in? Can you see that?
No.
No. Okay. Not to worry. We will make sure that this works. So for everyone who's listening today, Diego, Marius, and I are really, really grateful that you're joining us. We've got an incredible lineup today. So let me just read through who we've got. So today we've got Marie-Cécile Cervellon, Marie Chassot. So they're talking about the future of sustainable luxury. And then we've got, so that's at midday. All times are British summertime, so London time. At 1 o'clock, Angela Turner joining us from Canada, Dr. Martina Albertova. They're talking about the luxury renaissance. At 2 o'clock, Yasmin Mahmoudeh, who's an award-winning architect. At 3 o'clock, Marine Tanguy. And 4 o'clock, Yasmin Jones-Henry, who's ex-FT editor, journalist, researcher. And at 5 o'clock, the technologist and adventurer, Paul Archer. So just double checking that's all correct. I wouldn't want to give you the wrong information. Yeah. So we're going to, oh, here we got a message from Laurent. I've been looking at the agenda and I found nothing about digital transformation. Is this something you find is of importance to the industry? Sorry if I'm being rather dense on. Could you just elaborate on the which area of digital transformation you mean? I just want to make sure I'm answering exactly what you're after.
There it is.
So if we're talking about what I think you're talking about, digital transformation. So at 5 o'clock today, we are talking to the technologist and CEO of Jewel, Paul Archer, who will be talking a lot about digital marketing and the importance of brand advocacy as well. So that should be really interesting. And a lot of our speakers are going to be touching on the importance of sort of marketing to the digital sphere over the next few days, especially during the pandemic. Anything from operations model integration, the suppliers to new business models using the latest technology. Yeah, so Laurent, I think you will find Paul's talk later very interesting. And if you just bear with me a second, I will check some of the details of what the other speakers are talking about. Laurent, what industry are you in out of interest? And where are you joining us from? I'm silent again.
I think we've got more questions coming through. I see one from Irina and James.
Do you want to read them out? Because I can't see those.
Yeah, sure. So Irina's saying, hi guys, thank you for an interesting talk. So I'm wondering, everyone now is talking about digitalization of their businesses, fashion shows becoming digital, e-commerce, etc. We're all concerned about sustainability, especially in fashion. However, we're blind to digital pollution. The fact that we've moved our activities just created another unsustainable problem. What do you think? Irina, I completely agree. I think that there's it's the classic thing about pollution. You know, if it's invisible, no one seems to really bring it up. And it feels now that we have sort of this digitization that's sort of permeated every sector of society, the literal Internet of Things. We don't really talk about how it's possible that we can all be online at the same time, and our fridge could speak to our car and do all sorts of crazy stuff. Obviously there's giant waste being created by giant server farms and every other way of getting the world online. And as the economy shifts more in that direction, what does that look like? And I mean, I agree, it's a huge point and it needs to be addressed. I mean, it would I think it would be hard for me to offer a solution to that, but certainly safe to say that it's definitely a point that needs to be discussed. And what's the real solution to that? I don't really know, but I do believe in I do believe that retail will survive in a different capacity beyond this sort of inflection point post-COVID, because there's humans are intrinsically sort of tactile, and they like being immersed in sort of products. So I think that what retail looks like might change, but it might become even more immersive or more a spec or bespoke or whatever it may be. And so digital will, one way or another, always take leaps and bounds for the future to become more a sort of staple of business. But we need to find a sustainable solution for that.
I agree, Irina. Nobody thinks about all of these massive energy hungry servers that are obviously sitting somewhere so that we can do this. I think what would be interesting to look at, will the reduction in people traveling to and from their normal places of work, that reduction in carbon emissions from travel, how does that balance out with perhaps the increased use of the internet? If we're on the internet in our office and we're on the internet at home, but we're not driving or commuting to the office, hopefully that there would be improvements, you would have thought. But as I think from a technology perspective, how can we make these systems and processes more efficient and less data hungry? And obviously it's all tapped into increasing use of sustainable fuels as well.
And there are some really interesting technologies coming out to sort of solve that problem, but yeah, I mean, it's the huge new energy problem that we're going to have. And there's another question here by James saying our opinion on private jet charter as a form of luxury for the future. Been working as a broker for a while and noticed some people taking interest in this kind of a sector. I mean, it's I think that private travel, and sort of to expand that beyond aviation to just kind of general, is obviously of interest, because as we become more and more vulnerable to diseases and infections that could potentially wipe out giant parts of the economy and society, we as humans would essentially get to a point where we would prefer to not be around other people in a context that could harm us, and therefore that's probably why, I mean, in my opinion, why sort of jet charters and boat charters and so forth have increased. But
for sure.
by that same token, there's a sense of, I guess, personalization that goes alongside that, and to expand that beyond jets to sort of how brands can engage with consumers in a more personalized way, that they feel like they're being catered to directly. I think that's what I was saying about retail just a second ago, is that I feel like that's really the future of where sort of physical retail will go to as well.
I know that some people are now chartering private planes almost like Uber Pool. Have you seen this? So like you say, people are less inclined at the moment to want to travel on large planes with other people. So there is an increased use of private transport. how, I think probably in the overall scheme of things, it's still a fairly small proportion of all air travel.
Of course.
But if you do have the means to travel by this, using private planes, then it's probably your sort of obligation in some way to look at how you can offset other areas of your carbon footprint, really.
Absolutely.
If you are privileged enough to have that as an option, then it's also your responsibility to make decisions that help everybody else.
Yes.
We got any other questions? I can't see all of these coming up, so I'm going to try and fix that shortly.
Coming in by bits.
No. Okay, so if we've got no other questions, thank you so much, Diego. Always great talking to you.
Thank you, Hannah.
I know you're going to be around all day.
Yes.
For everyone who's watching, we've got different talks starting on the hour all day until 5 o'clock British summertime, and wrapping around 6 o'clock today here. So please do drop in and out. It's going to be incredibly interesting. Like I say, I would love to know where you're from, what you do, what your interest in the luxury week is, and if we can try and answer any of your specific questions or direct you towards the appropriate talk, we will. Join us on LinkedIn, join us on Facebook.